Alright, thanks for checking out this video. In this painting I'm going to be creating a night sky scene with a galaxy in the middle. And I have another video of a simple night sky. If you haven't seen that, check it out. This painting will incorporate some of those same techniques, but we're going to add to that a little bit with our galaxy. So let's get started. The materials I'm using are pretty basic brushes. I've got a medium size or large flat or bright brush, just a cheap brush, and I've got a similar brush that's just a little bit thicker and a little bit more firm, and I'm going to use that to create some of the cloud and atmospheric texture in our night sky. So I'll start out with this guy and then we'll start incorporating them. I'm just using Liquitex basic acrylic paints, artist paints. I've got black, cobalt blue, brilliant purple, light blue violet, and plain old white. I've got some water handy here for cleaning off my brush and some paper towel here as well. So I'm going to get started. I want the center area where my galaxy is going to be nice and bright, and then for that to gradually expand out into darker surrounding areas for my night sky. So my brush is clean. I'm going to start out by getting some white on it, and just very loosely where I envision the brightest part of my galaxy to be here, I'm just going to get some of that white on the canvas. Not drawing a shape, not too concerned about anything too final. Just getting some paint on here and just spreading it enough where it's going to be there and stay wet for a few minutes. Once I've got that general area created, I'm going to go into my light blue violet, and just on the outer edges of where I put that white, I'll blend in some of this light blue violet. Now I'm trying to smooth these colors together, but at this point I'm not worried about creating a perfect gradient or smoothing all my brush strokes out too much. You can see I'm grabbing more paint as I go and just using light pressured brush strokes so that I don't spread the paint too thin where I'm going to have to fight to blend things together. So as I move out from that center, I'm just using more and more of that light blue violet. I got less white on my brush. Then I'll start to grab a little bit of this cobalt blue here and blend that in the same way, just on the outer edges of where I left off with the light blue violet. Just a little bit of that cobalt blue. And that's going to make a nice transition into some black. I'll grab some black, and you can see I'll put that black a little bit outside of where I'm leaving off here, and then work it in towards that color so that I can blend them together easily. I don't want to just slap that black right into here and try and mix it in there. I'll start a little bit outside, and then I'll gradually work it into that other color to blend it in. You know, it can be a challenge to blend acrylic paints together, especially when they're drying fast on you. You just got to work quickly. Using a little bit of water sometimes can help extend the life of the paint. And on my upper edges here, I'm just going to get pretty much into all black to finish off those edges. Again, picking up more paint as needed. Okay, now down towards the bottom here, I left that open on purpose. I want this to kind of be lighter. If I'm painting a pretty standard landscape, technique is to have it lighter near the horizon. So you can see me grabbing my light blue violet and just letting that mix in with some of the black that's already on my brush and the black that I just put on the canvas to give me this light bluish gray to finish off the bottom edge here. And again, I'm doing, you know, a half-hearted attempt at blending these colors together. For my first layer, I just want it to be close. I don't need it to be perfect at this point. So I'll keep going with the light blue violet. It's mixing with some of my black on my brush. And I'm just trying to get some coverage here. Alright, so I got a basic layout of my painting. I got that nice bright center area where my galaxy is going to be. I gently faded it from that color into the dark color. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll work on that with our second layer. And then I just added some lighter values down towards the bottom where my horizon is to help create that landscape effect. Alright, so if your paint is really wet, you might take a few minutes to let it dry at this point. I'm just going to keep going for the sake of this demonstration. I'm going to set aside that brush that I was using and grab that more firm flat brush. And this one's kind of worn. You know, any brush will do for this. The more firm the bristles are, the better luck you'll have with the technique that I'm about to demonstrate. But definitely experiment with the materials that you have. There's not one way to do any of this stuff. So I'm going to approach this the same way I created that first layer. I'm going to work from the center out, light colors into dark colors, but I'm going to change up my brush stroke. I'm not going to use quite as much paint, so I just kind of wet one side of my brush here. And now I'm going to use more of a scrubbing or a circular style brush stroke. And what that's going to do for me is kind of create this cloudy atmospheric effect that's going to soften together some of my colors. So it's going to start to hide those initial brush strokes that we used to create that color. So I don't use a ton of paint, but I got to put more paint on my brush as I go to create this effect. And just like before, I started with white, and then I'll get into my light blue violet, and I'll just let some of these brush strokes overlap to smooth some of these colors together. It doesn't have to be a perfectly smooth blend, but that should start to happen for you at this point. So I've got a very general shape here in the middle. I'm not trying to make rings, and you'll see as we progress through the painting it doesn't matter so much what the shape is, just that that center area is nice and bright. Just like before, I used a little bit of cobalt blue as I worked my way out. And a little bit more about this brush stroke is I'm just light pressure. I'm not pushing into the canvas. I'm not trying to be too aggressive, but just spinning and twisting the brush. The brush stays on the canvas, and I'm just kind of a scrubbing motion. So some of my black is still wet, so I'm starting to pick some of that up as I work into that. That's fine. If not, when I get to those outer edges, I'll start to grab a little bit of black on my brush. And in this case, with the paints that I'm using, this light blue violet and this black, they make a nice soft bluish gray, which is great for these night skies to create that dull, distant light effect. If you don't have those same colors, that's alright. Maybe you're just trying to use something similar. This really creates a nice effect, these two colors together. So the light blue violet, a little bit of black, and that same swirling and a scrubbing brush stroke, working my way out from the center. Now as you do this, you should start to get your colors smoothing together a little bit more. Those rings that we kind of started out with should be less and less distinct. And as I get out to these areas in the outside edge here where it's just pretty much black, I shouldn't have to add more black. Even if that's dry already, I should just be able to let this color dissipate out on top of this black to create a fade or a blend in that area. I shouldn't have to add more black to blend into. So you can see me kind of taking some of the paint off the side of my brush here to use to help blend this stuff in. Alright, and then down near the bottom here, just again some of our light blue violet. Don't necessarily need a whole second coat down here. That's kind of the color that we're shooting for. I'm just going to wipe off some of the excess paint that's on my brush here. And then sticking with that light blue violet, just going to work my way around here one more time. I'm going to clean that brush off a little bit more. When I want to go back to working in this lighter area, I got to get rid of that dark color that's on my brush. So I clean off my brush, and then we can get some of that lighter color going again. So I'm just working around, and you'll have to play around with your painting to see where you want to smooth things together and which areas need attention. The idea here is just to create that glowing effect as best you can, light to dark, out in all directions. Now with that light blue violet, or just a light blue, whatever colors you're using, sort of that intermediate color between your brightest and your darkest, I want to create a little bit more of some glowing star effects and some cloud-like effects. So I'm just going to take some of that lighter color and just let it sort of wander out into these darker areas. And this will definitely take some experimentation as far as how it's going to blend together, and you know, different parts of the painting that are still wet, you're going to get different results. But I'm just going to try and get some of this lighter color to wander out from the center. Over here might be a good place to demonstrate. I just have some of that color wander out here, and you can see I'm just sort of twisting my brush a little bit along with that scrubbing motion, and that's giving me that cloudy result that I'm after. Get a little bit more up here, and you'll have to play around with that. Alright, so I've got that burst of color in the center. It fades out. I'm starting to get some of that cloudy atmospheric star glow, and we'll see how that comes together when we add in some of our stars. And first I'm going to clean off that same brush, get some of the excess water off it, and to create that galaxy effect, that dark band of that cloudiness across the center of my bright area here, I'm just going to use little bits of my darkest colors, a little bit of black, a little bit of my blue, and now I'll grab some of that purple, and I just got a little bit on the corner of my brush. All those colors, just loaded them up, didn't really stir them together. And the brush stroke I want to use to create that cloudy effect is similar to what we were just doing with that scrubbing, but now I'm just going to set the brush on the canvas and just work it across that bright area, but twist it, turn it, stretch it, kind of roll it, pick it up, tilt the brush, and very purposefully trying to get a very random result as far as the edges and the shapes that I create here. Definitely don't just want to draw a line. I don't want to just make the same pattern of movements across there. I want this to kind of be random and non-reoccurring. So I put some more paint on my brush, and I'll do that same thing. Maybe I make a pass in another direction. And I'm just light pressure with the brush, twisting, turning, tilting it, changing the angle, just trying to get different results as I work my way across. Sometimes it's the space between the brush strokes that's giving you the neatest effect. Some of the light color remaining revealed through that dark color that I just added. I'll go back to some of my other colors here, my lighter blue and purple, and make another pass here. Same brush stroke. And this will certainly require some experimenting on your part as well, just kind of twisting the brush, rolling it. You should pretty quickly see some cloud-like formations of that classic clumps of color that you see in an outer space scene. Okay, and then maybe a little bit more dark color, and my darkest colors sort of existing in the main body of this area. Just rolling and twisting my brush. Different brushes will work for this too. I find that a firm brush gives a pretty good consistent result. Maybe some of that dark color wanders out of my main shape here and there. Doesn't all just have to be one solid shape. Definitely don't want edges or anything too defined when I'm creating this effect. And as I have less and less paint on my brush, I can make these really faint indications of some of these cloudy areas. A nice technique I like to use is just kind of rolling the brush. There's paint on the side of my brush. I just sort of roll it around, and I'm under control when I do that, but I really don't know what sort of result I'm going to get. I kind of just work with what appears. Now, a color we haven't used too much of is this purple here, and once more, you might have different colors. You can incorporate a lot of different colors painting a scene like this, but I'm just going to add another color that I haven't used a lot of yet, and just go back with some of my previous brushstroke, creating that cloudiness and just sort of softening some of these things together. Every acrylic painting is all about the layers, creating contrast, creating colors that play off each other, work with each other. So I add just more and more layers of different color, and they all add up to create some depth and the illusion of distance and space. So I'll work my way around here, incorporating some of that purple. And you can see I'm just picking up the purple along with that light blue violet. Not really pre-mixing them, just getting them both on the canvas together. And I'm a big fan of this brush stroke where I just sort of rock and roll the brush around. It's a great way to make any sort of clouds. I do this a lot with just a normal daytime landscape scene, just to create that cloudy texture. You can have a lot of fun playing with different colors in this technique. Alright, and then I can combine that with my scrubbing brush stroke, which we used a lot before. That can soften some of those brush marks, smooth things out a little bit. Maybe a handful more of some lighter spots here. Just letting that brush swim around. And little marks like that are great for accentuating with stars, and we'll get into that in a few seconds here. But just letting that brush roll around. And I'll grab a little bit more of my light color down here in the foreground. One more pass. Maybe some larger marks. Maybe these are some clouds that are up close, or just some other reflections of light. And some purple and our light blue. And it might seem like a silly brush stroke, but just letting that brush twist around. It's spinning between my fingers, and then I'm just changing the angle and tilting it, and just watching what happens, recreating the cool stuff and discontinuing the ugly stuff. Alright, so I got lots of cloud effect, lots of different subtle color changes. That's what I'm after. I got my dark area in the center, which is my galaxy. To pull this all together, I want to build some stars in here. So you could use the corner of one of those brushes that I already used, or if you have a fine tipped brush like this one, that'll work great. The back of a brush could even work for creating stars, but I'm just going to load up a little bit of white paint here on the tip of this brush, and I want to find some of those areas where I've got some of that bright glow already, and use those to be good locations for stars. When I put this bright white dot in there, it really makes that little bit of color behind it create the illusion of a glowing effect. So I'm putting these on here randomly, but I'm also being thoughtful with some of them, trying to connect them to things that are in my painting rather than just putting them completely random. I definitely want them to be random. I don't want to create a pattern here or a polka dot. I don't want them all to be the same size or all spaced equally, so I move around as I create them, but I'm also looking for spots where they're going to make sense. I could use different colors when I do this too. Just using white to be simple here, but some yellow or a light blue, maybe even a tiny bit of red for some of these would look great. So using the brush is great when you want to put them in specific spots or you want to control the size and the shape a little bit. Another technique is to use a brush and kind of fray the bristles and spread them on there. We'll water the paint down a little bit and kind of splatter them on there. I like to use an old toothbrush rather than kind of thumbing through one of my nicer paint brushes. So I got the toothbrush here, and I just use a little bit of water and go into my white paint here, or whatever color you're going to use. You'll have to find the sweet spot as far as the ratio of water to paint. Too much water and your stars and your splatters are going to go everywhere, and you'll kind of get some stringy effects on there, which you might not want. Too little water and you won't get any effect. The paint's not really going to fly. So I got my water and my paint combined on my toothbrush here, and I'm just going to work my way around spreading those stars. Now this may not show up that well on the camera, but if you do this on your painting, you'll be able to see some great depth with all those millions of tiny stars. Alright, and it'll be up to you how far you want to take that and how many stars you want to put and where you build them into your painting. Alright, so this could stand alone as a painting just like this. You definitely could take it a lot further with more colors and more atmospheric effects. I'm going to finish it off by just creating some trees in the foreground to throw some contrast onto my light background. I'm just going to use plain old black. I'm going to go back to that medium-sized flat brush that I started out with. And you know, when I'm painting a silhouette, it could be anything down here. Mountains, trees, buildings, you know, maybe it's something flat, rolling hills, any kind of trees, you know, pine trees, palm trees, whatever you might want to do. I'm going to create some pine trees here that sort of create the illusion that we're looking up, and I'm going to do that by just leaning them all in towards the center of my painting. Wherever they enter from the outside, I'm just going to have them sort of angling in. And we could have a whole nother video on techniques for painting trees. I'm not going to get too crazy with these, but just trying to create some loose edges to these trees and not block in shapes or be too literal with branches or any other part of the tree. But angling them in can certainly create a cool effect of looking up. I'll have some different size trees, space them a little differently. Maybe just some brush strokes that kind of go vertically. I can make it look like there's some trees in the distance. And then maybe I've got something that's a little bit larger. And I'm just sort of letting that brush skip around in a lot of different ways to paint trees. Just a quick example here, or a way to finish a painting like this. Just kind of using the edge of the brush to create some little branches. Since it's just the silhouette of these trees, you can really get away with a lot. Nothing has to be too exacting. There, and in future videos maybe we go over how to bring those trees to life further. For the purposes of this video, I think we got a pretty good effect. I hope you're able to get something useful out of watching this video. Thanks for checking it out, and good luck with your next painting.